and recognized in the island since 1948, and in all U.S. colonies since 1921. The applicable foreign section of the Internal Revenue Code, currently Section 901, has long provided a rich bounty to stateside companies doing business in the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. They carry out business as if they were in a foreign country, which Puerto Rico is not. They benefit from incentives that have long ceased to contribute to the new job creation in Puerto Rico. And that's the primary point, that these incentives are tied to status, they're tied to a particular type of status, and they're no longer creating jobs in the island. And in fact, they take billions of dollars from the U.S. Treasury because these monies are repatriated to pharma industry in the United States. But let's face it, this is tax jargon to many people, and I'm sure including many in this particular committee and the people here at this meeting. The bottom line is that manufacturing in Puerto Rico was the backbone of the economy, but has not increased job creation in the island for over a quarter of a century. Even while transfer payments to pharma have increased from $5 billion in 1976 to $30 billion in 2010, and that's important to emphasize. It's not that we are not providing incentives to pharma and we've taken away the incentives to pharma and doing away with Section 936. The incentives, the tax subsidies, have increased fivefold from 1976 to 2010. Profits have dramatically increased for pharma and some of the little manufacturing left in Puerto Rico, but the employment has gone down, both in the pharma sector and the manufacturing sector at large. What this means is that the territorial status and the current foreign-based tax subsidies are helpless to address Puerto Rico's economic quagmire, as they did in the past, and they should be given their due. We're not here to deny the past. They were useful in transforming Puerto Rico from an agricultural economy to where it is now, but they're not taking Puerto Rico to where it needs to be. To suggest that economic development has been unrelated or is not related to political status is wrong, particularly when there is insistence on foreign revenue based tax subsidies as a solution to Puerto Rico's current situation. A simple example will illustrate, an example that's only a few weeks old. Pfizer Pharmaceutical, and I believe that they're a great corporate citizen, so I'm not picking on pharma, that's not the point. One of the greatest employers in Puerto Rico, having over 5,000 to 6,000 employees in the island, just announced a few weeks ago, while claiming the $901 billion tax benefits, that it would eliminate about 20% of its workforce in Puerto Rico. That is the problem that you're facing. There it is in stark terms, your old-fashioned U.S. territory-dependent tax subsidy fiddling away money while the jobs in Puerto Rico are burning. The solution, as I stated before in the previous panel, is job creation and incentives, not subsidies. The solution is not one that should be nailed to the territorial status, as has been the case in the past, that once worked for the economy, an economy that was not developed, and an economy that is now developed. The solution is one that is status neutral. I know there's been some back and forth in that, but I propose that the solution that we have put forth for the committee works under the current territorial status and also works under status. So what could be more neutral than that? So I ask that the task force give its highest priority to two critical pieces of legislation, increasing the wage tax exemption so that we don't have a revenue-based, but rather a wage-based tax credit. Second passage of legislation creating empowerment zones in Puerto Rico and all other economically depressed areas of the U.S. Don't make Puerto Rico any more different than people have tried to make it in the past. It is a U.S. territory, it's part of the U.S., and the legislation should apply now as a territory or if it chooses to become a state. A wage tax incentive would provide federal incentives instead of subsidies for companies to create jobs and pay actual salaries. What a novelty. You have to create jobs in order to get an incentive. Let's do it the right way. Let's not just give money to companies that create revenue. Let's give tax breaks to companies that create jobs. Empowerment zones should take place across the states, Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia, so that we all can benefit from the empowerment zones. In sum, a wage tax benefit and empowerment zone will help Puerto Rico. It will break the chains of the old territory inequality-based tax subsidy and will keep U.S. jobs on U.S. soil. That is the solution. a solution that makes sense for all, and the next move is up to you.
I want to make one final important point. You have a deadline coming on October 31st or 30th. The people of Puerto Rico have hopes that finally an administration, this administration, will stand up to the plate and offer a process, a real process, an effective process, a process that leads us somewhere so we can actually put the status solution debate on track to being resolved. As such, we would expect a recommendation as to whether a course of HR 2499, the bill that is currently before the Senate, is a course that you think is a correct one, or whether you think recognizing the authority of Puerto Rico to convene a special constitutional assembly on status, as I proposed and has been drafted and supported by the Puerto Rico Bar Association and by a tripartisan committee of lawyers of all political ideologies, and will have ample support of the society, or if you think another process that starts from the administration and interacts and engages the people of Puerto Rico with a response mechanism is the correct one. But we need to hear from you, and we hope and we urge the task force that when you do file a report, you specifically recommend the President of the United States. What should be the specific process to move this issue forward? We've had task force, we've had hearings, we've had debates, we've had scholarly analysis. What we need is the power of the presidency to say, we support a process for Puerto Rico. We think this is the correct one. We think that these are the options, and we believe that all options should be non-territorial, sovereignty-based, and the three ballot options, as I said, Estado Libre Asociado, Soberano, statehood, and independence. But, you know, we've been clamoring, all of us, stateholders, independentistas, and people who believe in the development of the current political arrangement, we've been clamoring for action from the federal government, and we urge you to take this opportunity and to fulfill the expectations that you have created by recommending some sort of ballot process so that the administration can engage this issue and Puerto Rico can be engaged by the administration, and we can finally move to solve this issue.
Okay, one last comment. Why don't we go right here?
Thank you. Well, we've heard a lot of issues that are brought up, and again, I know I made comments to one of the committees earlier today about specific recommendations on what can be done in the area of mental health, workforce development, community education, but I think it's a good closing.
We've been really focusing on looking towards the future and what kind of training we can provide that will match what these other departments are doing in terms of the ability to attract investment, so that we're training the workforce for the future in areas like green jobs, possibility for health care, allied health, etc. We toured along with everyone and received a lot of really interesting information from regional municipalities and regions, and municipalities, specifically around their interests, because we need to hear from you what you think, where the island can go and what kind of investments can be made, and how we can also better leverage our resources as we move forward. So everything from infrastructure we heard, and as well as issues like tourism and ecotourism. So it's all looking forward.
Vision on doing so as well, and really thank you and encourage you to please take those considerations. And as I mentioned, I did give the committee some remarks with respect to some specific recommendations on what can be done to ensure more diverse, multidisciplinary workforce to meet the mental health needs of the Puerto Ricans living on the island. So thank you again, and good luck with all your work.
Thank you very much. So we're nearing time. I want to thank everybody on the task force as well as all of the participants for coming here today and joining us, and for engaging with us both on the issue areas that we talked about in the breakout sessions, as well as sticking with us through the plenary sessions, where we got a chance to get really in depth into some additional really critical issues.
I find it a real reminder of the power of the ideals of democracy to engage in this conversation about the status question. I know many of us on the task force were really struck when we were in San Juan with the passion with which people discuss this issue. I'm feeling struck by that again today. In San Juan, we heard people quoting Thomas Paine. I think Chief Justice Marshall was quoted today. It's really really testament to the power of these issues and the power of these ideals. And we take that enormously seriously, and we really appreciate people's commitment to coming forward and talking us through those issues today. We also take very seriously and really had sobering reminders of the gravity of the economic situation, the importance of bringing good ideas to the table and innovative strategies to the table, to looking at things like capacity issues, as well as innovative ways that the agencies can be engaged with the government of Puerto Rico and the people of Puerto Rico in tackling some of these difficult questions. We've made some progress in the last 16 months, particularly with the Recovery Act. We made additional progress in the Health Reform Act. So I'm pleased to be able to say that this is something that, even as the task force continues its work, that we've been able to, as an administration, engage in and to move forward somewhat. We obviously still have a long way to go, and the work of the task force, but also the participation of people here in San Juan is really helpful in helping us understand those issues as we really continue our work in the agencies, but also begin to frame our recommendations for later this year. So really many, many thanks for everyone's participation. There are still ways for people to provide input to the task force, and we encourage folks to do that if they didn't feel that they got a good hearing. And we know obviously there are people who weren't able to participate today, and we are really, again, grateful for people's participation and encourage the conversation to continue.
And I just want to echo Cecilia's thanks. The email address is puertorico@who.eop.gov for folks who want to send additional comments. Just as we were in San Juan, I think we were struck by a number of common themes, in particular the discussion of how status and the economic issues are intertwined, the need that whatever process is put in place needs to be a fair one. I think we certainly hear, as we did on the island, the desire for something to happen and not to be here in 10 years or 15 years or 25 years asking the same questions again. I think we've also hear what I take as a request that the options be clarified so that there can actually be a process going forward. So we are going to be hard at work for the next few months. We would really appreciate any other views or thoughts that you or others that you know may have that will help us through this work. But we really appreciate how much thought everyone, I want to thank the task force members. I want to particularly thank the panelists for all the effort they put in. I want to thank each person in the audience for the amount of thought and effort that you put in preparing your views and providing them to us today. It is, I think, for both Cecilia and I, we are honored to serve in this role and to advise President Obama on this critical issue. And we're going to get back to work. So thank you very much.